The Chicago Bulls defense has been bad, but is it possible that it's worse than what maybe we even realize? We're going to talk about that. Plus, we're going to talk about what are the most unsustainable things about the Chicago Bulls' early start of the season, and should the Bulls trade Nikola Vucevic and strike while the iron's hot while he's playing some of his best basketball in a Bulls uniform? We're going to get to all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's get into this content for today, y'all. I want to start off talking about something I've been talking about a lot, and it's because it's the biggest glaring issue with the Chicago Bulls team, and that's the Bulls defense. When you look at it, every Chicago Bull player has a negative first half net rating, except for Lonzo Ball, who is 0. He's even. And Taylor Horton-Tucker, surprisingly enough, who's at 1.7. The Bulls starting lineup has a negative first half rating of negative 52.9. And Billy Donovan's talked about this and what they need to change defensively, saying this. We have got to be able to change and switch out of different coverages. And I thought tonight we did not do a great job after free throws, after timeouts. We're in the zone one time and we have one or two guys playing man. We got to be able to really be locked into what we're doing. I think it starts with the communication, but I also think it starts with the understanding that things are going to change throughout the course of the game. You can't just keep playing the same coverage for 48 minutes. Yeah, because teams adapt. And if you play the exact same coverage for the entirety of the basketball game, any coach that's half worth their salt when it comes to coaching in the NBA is going to be able to adjust to that scheme. Now, one of the things that Billy Donovan pointed out in this that I wanted to talk about is that he said they were in zone one time and they had 2 or 3 guys playing man. Now, I don't know if he meant by that they weren't supposed to be playing man. I've been saying for a while that the Bulls are playing, they switched to a man zone hybrid defense. And if you go back to my post-game shows, I say that when people are like, well, we didn't adjust defensively. I said, no, we went from a zone to a hybrid zone when it's hybrid man and zone. So now, via what Billy Donovan is saying, it sounds like it's not that we went to a hybrid zone style defense. The Bulls just weren't playing the zone correctly, which is even more crazy. Like, I was giving some credit to where credit wasn't even due in a case like that by saying that the Bulls were trying to be creative and going to a hybrid zone. Now, maybe that's not what he meant by that, but the fact that he says we were playing zone and we have 2 guys playing man, and he says we got to be locked into what we're doing. So I don't know if that's, hey, the guys that were playing man weren't locked in, and so it blew up the person that was playing zone, zone defense, or is he saying that, hey, the guys that were playing man were supposed to be in zone coverage and they weren't doing that correctly? Like, that's crazy, right? Now, I try to, I'm somebody who always, I think, tries to err more on the side of optimism than pessimism. But if you're supposed to be in zone coverage and you're not intentionally running a hybrid zone man coverage, what are we doing out there, right? Yeah, it's what are we doing? And so, this is a Bulls team that has come back down to earth, right? And I think now we're starting to see more of maybe what the Bulls are and what their shortcomings are, but it's still early in the season. We'll still see how they grow and adapt, but there are just some things, especially with that are just kind of standing out. Another thing to point out is Josh Giddey and his off court numbers. Now, I think that Josh Giddey has had a solid season, right? But there's something to be said, whether it's the makeup of guys, and plus minus isn't this end all be all, right? Because if you're on the court when your team gives up a big run, which Josh Giddey is on the court when the team gives up a lot of big runs, it's all right. How much is that is on the team defense? How much is that the teams are just attacking that one player? That's where it looks at, right? And are teams kind of isolating out on Josh Giddey? I think, yeah, at times, but I don't think it's as much. But when you look at it, Josh Giddey right now has a negative point differential, on-off efficiency differential of negative 17.7, which is 8.4 points worse than the person in second place, and that's actually Patrick Williams. Now, again, I want to be clear here that differential of efficiency with the Bulls are out there. It could be just the fact that the Bulls aren't playing good team defense when Josh Giddey's out there. There's some of that. People are attacking him for sure as well. And so but it's not just Josh Giddey. The only Chicago Bulls starter that has a positive on-off number is Coby White, and we're going to get into that in a little bit, right, when it comes down to it. Overall, like, you just got to look at Josh Giddey right now. Teams when Josh Giddey are on the court are plus 10.8 points per 100 possessions when Josh Giddey's on the court. And so that gets back to kind of what we talked about when we did the lineups episode a few episodes ago, and how you have to manage and stagger offense and defense and balance that. And in the starting lineup, we just don't have a good offense-defense balance. That also plays into the point of the Bulls giving up such bad first-half leads, right? We just don't have a good balance. So whether that means that you want to change your starting lineup, or whether that means you want to maybe pull one of your starters out sooner, right? Have a bench player come in there to kind of add some more defense, whatever it is, this coaching staff got to get working on it. Now, I can understand wanting to wait 10 or 15 games to see exactly how things trend, right? And because the trends could change a little bit over that. But I think if you get a 15-game sample size and this thing holds true that the Bulls are just giving up such bad first-half leads, you got to do something about it. You cannot sit there and keep trying to throw out the same starting lineup that's giving up leads like this, because it's really hurting yourself. And so we'll talk about a little bit of that when we talk about what's sustainable and what's not sustainable. But let's talk about one of the positives in this, right? Coby White right now is having a better season than what even the numbers, I think, tell us Coby White is having. And that is because how much better the Bulls have been on the court. And that's something that's an advanced analytic. You won't just see that looking at box score stats. Yes, Coby White is averaging the highest points per game in his career through these 7 games. And that's with 2 games that were horrendous for Coby White. He's averaging 20.6 points per game. He's doing that on 15 shots per game, hitting it at a 45% clip, which is both the best volume and the best percentage of his career. And while he started off the season shooting cold from 3-point range, he's shooting now 41%, again, a best mark from his career, and taking 9.3, again, the most in his NBA career. He's also averaging 4.3 rebounds, which is second best in his career, 4.6 assists, second best in his career as well. He's also averaging a steal and a half per game. That's by far the best in his career. That's almost double than the best mark in his career at 0.8. He's almost at 1.6, right? So he's playing the best. Coby White is showing that last year was not a fluke. This is still a guy. Now, that does not mean that he does not have to stop the up and down nature of his play, right? He has to be more consistent with his play. But then let's get into the advanced analytics of what Coby White is bringing to the basketball court for the Chicago Bulls. He has, when you look at the on-off numbers for Coby White this season, it's by far the best of any Chicago Bull on the court. He has a positive point differential of 11.9, meaning that when Coby White is on the court, we are outscoring opponents by almost 12 points when he's on the court. Now, he is the player that is staggering his time with that bench unit right now. That was one of the questions we had coming into the season. Who is going to be the stagger guy? That has been Coby White. So Coby White has been out there as well when the Bulls have gone on some of their better runs. And, I mean, I've said it before, when him and Iota Sumo are in the backcourt, we're seeing the best out of Coby White. If you look at this right now, Coby White has an expected wins added of 27 wins, meaning that the level that Coby White is playing, it's worth 27 more wins to your total. And now that's a number that's going to ebb and flow as the season goes on. So take that. It's not an analytic that I like to use a lot, but we're just going over it. Per 100 possessions, the Chicago Bulls are outscoring opponents by 19.1 points per 100 possessions when he's on the court. We're shooting a better effective field goal percentage of 9.6% when Coby White's on the court. Now, we do have a higher turnover percentage when Coby White's on the court, but that is what it is when it comes down to that. That's just kind of the nature of playing with Coby White. Got to get that. But another special thing on it is that when Coby White is on the court, and keep in mind, the Chicago Bulls are not a great offensive rebounding team. We're an amazing defensive rebounding team. We lead the league in that stat, and we're the second best rebounding team in the league overall. But when Coby White is also on the court as a guard, we're plus 7.8 offensive rebounds, and that's because the long rebounds, because of the number of threes, it puts your guards in better positions to get rebounds, right? And we're also getting to the free throw line more when Coby White's on the court. That's another thing that Coby White's growing his game in that I talked about I wanted to see. He's getting to the free throw line at the best rate of his career. Now, he's only hitting it at a 79% clip, which is actually one of the worst free throw shooting percentages of his career. He got to hit it, but at least he's getting to the free throw line more. Coby White is impacting things from top to bottom, right? When you look at the defensive aspect as well, like, yeah, it's better, right? Teams are having more turnovers when he's on the court. That's because of his 1.5 steals per game. And so the Bulls have to look at that as well. And you want to take that into consideration just to compare that, right? because Coby White is having a great season. Zach LaVine is having a better statistical season. He's averaging more points than Coby White, things like that. But with that said, when Zach LaVine is on the court, the Bulls are actually getting outscored by 1.9 points, and we're scoring 5.9 points negative 5.9 points, so 5.9 points worse per 100 possessions when Zach LaVine is actually on the court, despite Zach LaVine's own personal. Now, this isn't, again, these analytics aren't end all be all. It's just to kind of it's to add flavor to it. We're adding salt to it, right? And so also our turnover percentage when Zach LaVine's on the court goes up to 3.8%. That's not good at all, right? So you look at those things, and again, Zach LaVine is having a great season. He's being efficient from the field, but this is what people look at when you talk about how you overall impacting the game of basketball. Now, to flip side of that, on defense though, when Zach LaVine is on defense on the court, other teams are actually averaging -4 points worse per 100 possessions. So they're 4 points worse. So Zach LaVine is impacting defense. They're also shooting a worse effective field goal percentage of 2.5% when Zach LaVine's on the court. They're turning the ball over more when Zach LaVine's on the court. Their offensive rebounding less when Zach LaVine's on the court, meaning he may be boxing out his guy. So Zach LaVine is actually having a really good defensive impact for the Chicago Bulls, but his offense isn't necessarily per the number, and that's kind of one of the knocks on Zach LaVine that people have used. We're going to flip that again to Nikola Vucevic, who's having a astounding season statistically for the Bulls. We're actually have a negative 6.7 point differential when he's on the court, and per 100 possessions, we're actually scoring 7.2 points worse per 100 possessions when Nikola Vucevic is on the court. And despite Vucevic's rebounding as well, the Bulls are actually rebounding the ball at 2.9% worse when Vucevic is on the court. That number just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm telling you right now, that number makes no sense to me at all because Vucevic is a rebounding monster so far this season. But I only say that not to compare it. I'm just saying it to mainly highlight the fact of this is how good Coby White has been. In the totality of the game of basketball, this is how good Coby White has been this year. He's impacting the game in more areas despite other players in Vucevic and Zach LaVine being more efficient and scoring more points than him. So that's something to look at as well as this season goes on, especially if you're trying to find kind of a mix and a dynamic to kind of fix some things for you, and we'll see what happens there. But in talking about Nikola Vucevic, it brings me to my next topic that I want to talk a little bit about. And I know this may not be something that's popular with a lot of Bulls fans. It may be extremely popular with some Bulls fans. What do we do with Nikola Vucevic? And the reason why I ask, Vuce right now is 30th in the NBA in scoring overall. 30th in the NBA. And so when you talk about the fact that there are 30 teams, 5 starters on each team, Nikola Vucevic at the early part of the season has been one of the best scorers in the game of basketball, both from an efficiency standpoint and more. He's shooting right now 54.8% from the field and 48% from three-point range, both some of the best marks of his NBA career, and he's doing that in year, 13 this is for Nikola Vucevic? Like, you cannot deny that Vuce is playing great, averaging 21 points per game, 11 rebounds per game, 4 assists, and his passing has been a huge mark of why he's been playing well. He's also averaging a block per game so far on this season for the Chicago Bulls. Vuce is playing great. And so the question is, and this is a question that we're always going to have because of this team and what this team has done or fallen short of, Vuce, should the Bulls be striking hot right now if Vuce's market on the trade deadline is higher than what it's been? And the reason why you ask that is, A, can Vuce sustain this, right? That's one thing that you have to ask here. Can Vuce sustain this level of play? And at Vuce being one of the oldest Bulls on this team at 34, when you've clearly gone younger, should the Bulls, even if it means the season being tougher for the Bulls on the back half of the season with Jalen Smith, and maybe at that point you're running Adama Sanogo or wherever you get back in the trade, should Nikola Vucevic be on the trade block if he keeps up playing this way as we get closer to the trade deadline? That's one of the questions that I want to present here because, listen, Vuce is playing great. He is helping the Chicago Bulls win games. But again, we're below 500 again. If this continues, but Vuce's level of play stays the same, I think you're going to be having teams call on Nikola Vucevic. And because the Bulls have missed on so many times in recent years of not striking while the iron is hot, is this a perfect opportunity to trade Nikola Vucevic and get more back than what you would? Because if he tapers off at the end of the season, if he has a weak finish to the season, you may not get that value in the offseason. But the Bulls also could keep this going on if he keeps up this level of play for the full season, of course, you can wait till the offseason. You can wait till around the draft to move him. You can do those type of things. But the question I want to throw to you guys is this. Should the Bulls be trying to strike while the iron is hot on Vooch because of the reasons that I laid out? Or is it a situation where, hey, Haize, he's helping us win games. Let's keep him, and let's just let the chips fall where they may. And that would be what this front office has done prior. Let me know what you guys think on that. Now, I want to get into, I've asked a lot about, is the Bulls' current level of play sustainable, right? I've talked a lot about that. And I want to bring that conversation here. When you look at it right now, there are certain things about the Bulls that just haven't been great. When you look at it, the Bulls' defense is terrible, right? We've talked about it right now. We're 28th, and the thing that makes how the Bulls been playing, especially how potent their offense has been, maybe not as sustainable. We're 28th in fast break points when you look at it, despite being a run and gun team. And listen, I came into the season saying the Bulls weren't probably going to not try to play run and gun. They were going to try to play more up-tempo than being run and gun. No, we're a run and gun team. And despite us and the pace that we play on, we're 28th in opponent fast break points, meaning that we give up tremendous amount of points in the paint, 56.9 points in the paint that we give up. That is the highest of any team in the NBA. And so when you look at the Bulls defense and you look at the fact that it's not three-pointers that we're giving up anymore, it's the easy buckets, the 56.9% points in the paint. Then when you flip that, while the Bulls lead the league in pace right now, we're second in three-point attempts, and we're sixth best in three-point shooting percentage. That's really good, but the thing that you have to ask yourself is shooting 38% over the course of an 82-game season. If the Bulls do not maintain that, this offense is going to fall apart. We're not scoring at the rim efficiently. We're not getting into the free throw line enough. We're 28th right now in the percentage of our points scored in the paint. 36 points scored in the paint per game. You're giving up 56. You're giving up more than 20 points in the paint than what we're scoring in the paint. Scoring in the paint is the easy buckets. So right now, the Bulls are just not getting easy offense. I'm sorry, the live by the three, die by the three thing is great, but if the Bulls start dying by the three, we have nothing else offensively to lean on because we're just not efficient. We're not getting to the paint. We're 29th on fast break of our points coming in fast break, and we're 22nd at the free throw line in the NBA. Those are the three most sustainable things about offense: scoring in the paint, three-point percentage of our offense, and free throw percentage. The Bulls aren't doing any of that well. We're not doing any of that well. I'm sorry, fast break. I said three-point percentage, fast break percentage. So because we're not scoring effectively in the fast break, we're 29th in fast break points, we're 28th in points in the paint, and we're 22nd in free throw line. We're towards the bottom part of the league in all of those categories, and that's where easy offense comes. When you live by the three, die by the three, dying by the three is a lot more likely than living by the three. So unless the Bulls are able to keep up their three-point shooting for a whole entire season, which when you have Vooch shooting at almost 50%, when you have Josh Giddey shooting at 40% from three, you got to ask yourself, are those things sustainable, right? And if they're not, this Bulls offense could fall off fast, hard, and ugly. It could do those things very soon if the Bulls don't tighten the fuck up. And so if the Bulls cannot start doing the more efficient things better, and that comes down to catching cutters, those type of things, getting Vooch the ball, Jalen Smith points at the rim, breaking down defenses more. Our half-court defense has got to be better, right? And so that's another thing that you're doing right now. The Bulls have shot themselves to wins right now. And so without scoring much in the paint, without getting to the free throw line, without even scoring really in transition well, like for us to be a fast-paced team, we're not even scoring in transition very well. These are things that could cause this team to absolutely fall off. Now, again, too early in the season to say. We're 7 games in, right? We got a lot of games left to be played, but you're looking at this and asking yourself, is this sustainable? And if it's not, this is going to be ugly. And maybe the Bulls start, maybe as the three-point shooting percentage falls down right now, maybe they're just riding what's working. And something to be said that that's what you should be doing. But if it stops working for yourself, you got to ask you, what is your identity then as an offense if your threes all of a sudden stop falling? And maybe that never happens. There are teams that stay hot from three the whole entire season. But when you factor in the lack of defense, when you factor in the lack of effective and efficient scoring from the Chicago Bulls, this thing could get ugly. And while we're having a lot of fun talking about the Bulls and the pace and all those things now, it can go from us talking about that to talking about struggles very quickly. Let me know what you guys think about that down below. Now, we do have a game today against the Dallas Mavericks when the Bulls face. Now, Zach LaVine has already been listed as questionable for this game, and I think the fact that we haven't heard anything about Miles Vucevic being sent back down to the G League, that could very well play into that as well. The Dallas Mavericks right now are going to be without P.J. Washington, and Derek Lively III is also listed as questionable for this game. But as we've talked about with the Bulls, it doesn't matter. Now, I will say this, Derek Lively not being there and that taking away a little bit of what they can do from that center position, but Daniel Gafford has given Nikola Vucevic work before, but maybe it makes it a little bit easier on Jalen Smith. The Dallas Mavericks right now, despite their record, right, which, they got Klay Thompson, they're 4-3 right now on the season. They're averaging 112 points per game, which is actually towards the bottom part of the league, right? But their defense has been surprisingly good to start off the season so far. They're top 12 in defense at 109 points per game that they're giving up. Keep in mind, the Bulls are in the bottom 5 of the league. We're giving up 119 points on the defensive side of the ball, so the Bulls got to look out for that. The Bulls are going to have to do what they've done best so far this season, and that's rebounding the basketball. We are the third best team right now rebounding, and that's only because other teams play while we sat. But we're 46 rebounds per game that we're doing, but the Dallas Mavericks are right there, 47 rebounds per game as well. And the thing that the Dallas Mavericks are doing much better than the Chicago Bulls, the Dallas Mavericks are one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the league, averaging almost 12 offensive rebounds per game. So that's something that you definitely got to look at there. And so you got to keep them off that offensive glass. And of course, you got Luka there, you got Kyrie Irving there, you got Thompson there, Klay Thompson there, who's playing really well for this team so far on the early part of the season. The Bulls got to be locked in. And defensively, this may turn into a game where I can see this game is where we say some games are going to turn into who can make the defensive stop. This game could turn into who gets hot offensively, who stays hot offensively. I could very well see it turning into that. So there's something to look out for this team. You got Kyrie averaging 24 points, Luka averaging almost 30 points per game, Klay averaging 15 on efficient shooting. You got to be prepared for this team, and we already know the role players and how they play on this team as well. The Bulls got to be locked in, and especially if we're missing Zach LaVine, we got to be more efficient than what we were, and we cannot allow this Dallas Mavericks team to get out to an early lead because this is not the type of team you're going to probably come back from. Now, the Bulls have come back from teams like the Orlando Magic, so we know that they can, especially if they get hot shooting-wise. But you want to avoid that. And so we'll see what the Bulls can do tonight against the Dallas Mavericks. I'm hoping that they come in here very much so prepared. You've had 2 days off. Let's get it. Let's play well. And let's see what the Bulls bring. Let me know what you guys are thinking and feeling down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.